Futures Magazine, Forbes Magazine, financial commentator on every business channel worldwide, hedge fund owner, longtime real estate investor, music royalty investor. It is now o'clock and we got him. I'm so excited about today, I can hardly even stand it.
I can hardly tell.
Karen, today our guest in the Banter box is an amazing, amazing individual. And I don't fanboy out very often, but but today is an exception because our guest today is somebody who not only have I been friends with for many years, but I've respected for many years and have watched what he's been able to do, really embracing the now, which is obviously our topic for the day. But as an investor, as a mentor, as somebody who is incredibly diverse in the skill set and knowledge set, and has had access to literally thousands and thousands and thousands of investors. The thing, dudes, and the thing, he knows a thing or two. I'm even tripping up on my words. He knows a thing or two about investors and talking about why it is that investors sometimes don't embrace the now.
Let's bring him in.
Let's bring him in. Noble DraKoln, everyone.
Woo!
Hey guys.
I am so unbelievably thrilled and excited to have you here this morning. And I know we talk like 80 times a week, but I'm actually more excited about this because I feel like we get to share you with the world.
Oh man, I appreciate it. Everything you're saying is far and beyond what I would expect, but I appreciate the sentiment. I guess maybe when you start talking about the accolades, it's the past for me, because again, I guess the top today is embracing the now. And so I think one of the first things one of my mentors taught me when I first got into sales and marketing was you're only as good as your last sale. So you can't really focus on all the past and the past accolades. What are you doing now? How are you contributing? How are you improving the world? What is your mission today? And does your past really set the future for whatever you want to do next? And so thanks a lot for all that great introduction, Casey. We need to talk about your accolades. We need to get someone on to talk about you. You far exceed me by a mile.
Well, it's really funny you say that. And this is, and for those of you that are new to our show, this is maybe the first episode you've caught. The premise of our show is that we bring someone that we think is really awesome, that has a lot to say in helping you guys save time and or make more money in your business. And so the goal here is that we have a full-blown conversation. There's nothing to sell. There's nothing to train you on. This is about the three of us having kind of a banter. And sometimes we all agree. Sometimes we don't all agree. Sometimes we have different points of view. And that's what really brings the Banter box into focus for a lot of folks. So
right. And we're talking about embracing the now. And so, I'm always curious as to why business owners don't take action. They know, they hear, they learn, and then there's that disconnect. I don't get it. I really honestly don't get it.
Karen, so this is really funny. So I'm going to take a stab at this, and Noble, I'd love to have your kind of thought on this. So first off, just going back to what we were just talking about, it's really interesting because I try really hard not to live in the past. So much so that even as a kid, when I used to win trophies for debate or trophies in tennis, I never kept them. I literally just kind of threw them in the trash. And even as a speaker and as a trainer, I'm really fortunate that I've been given some awards and accolades, and I really kind of even diminished them. I mean, even in my film producing career, I mean, I've taken home some pretty hefty medal, and never really means a whole lot to me. But I'm also one of those guys that sometimes has a hard time sort of getting off the starting block. And I had a situation happen literally yesterday that I want to throw at the two of you, because I think this is going to start talking about the in the now. So I have a friend who I am a quasi consultant for one of his projects. And I gave him a task yesterday because the business is I'll just say it. It's creating a newsletter, and this newsletter is going to be built as an asset to ultimately sell down the road, so easily and so clearly seen by me that to start out, it's like, go get 10 subscribers a day. and you don't go to bed until you get 10 subscribers. And it's really interesting. I talked to him like 18 times yesterday, and I went to bed last night really frustrated because he gave me everything that was he could possibly do, and people he knows, and people he's gonna. And I just was like, dude, I'm not talking to you until you hit 10. And I was thinking about our show this morning. I was like, dude, it's 10 subscribers. Like, there should be something that, like, if you can't focus on that, and I think it's the same deal as like, do we get stuck in our old ways and our old habits and our old things before it allows us to kind of
Fear. I think it's fear.
I mean, I think it's a combination of a lot, right? It's fear, it's paralysis, it's information overload. We're in a time where you're getting so much data from everywhere that you have to sift through a lot of noise to figure out if this is like the thing you should do, right? Facebook comes out and it was the first social media platform. Then all of a sudden you've got Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram and you have all this explosion in different, Twitter, which is X now. So you figuring out, well, I just figured out finally how to do Google ads. I finally figured out how to do the Facebook platform. Now I've got to learn how to do LinkedIn, Twitter. And I mean, at some point you're like, do I really need that activity? Do I really want to learn something new? And does it make sense that I even participate there? And the scary part is, and I really believe it, people get in this mindset that just because things they are the way they are now, that they'll always stay that way. And so because Facebook has gotten big and Facebook bought Instagram, maybe it's not time to change that. Or as you brought up, yeah, I can get 10 people, but should I email? Then you get the paralysis, right? Should I email them? Should I just put a blast out on TikTok? Should I message people on Facebook? The pathway to success is so varied that it's almost impossible to figure out what the 1 to 2, 3 things to do, because you don't even know how to start.
Well, it's interesting, and if we can just stick on this slim narrow path for just a second, because I think this is so valuable, and it's going to help a lot of people that are stuck. And I think businesses, even if they're doing millions of dollars in revenue, are also stuck. They're just stuck going from a different plateau to a different plateau, right?
Right.
So the way that this showed up for me years and years ago is I was actually training a team of Mary Kay reps, of all things, and it was either Mary Kay or Avon. It doesn't matter. But we were training the whole thing, and the challenge is that no one was really making any sales, right? And so we came up with this idea where the goal was to sell $10 a day, small, and it's literally like, you don't go to bed until you sold $10. And I think we were selling a tube of lipstick. We had a small item, and it was like, that was what the driver was. And every single person that committed to doing that for a month blew through everybody else. Because you get, first it's your friends and family, buy a tube of toothpaste. Then it's like, or a lipstick. Then it's like, okay, now I need to get a little bit more creative. Now I need to get a little bit more creative. And all of a sudden, the
momentum. Yeah.
Nobody only sold $300 worth of product by the end of the month. Right. And so my theory was in this conversation yesterday was like, if we start with 10 subscribers a day, by the end of the month, you're going to have way more than 30.
Right.
Because you're going to have a residual effect. And so I just want to tease both of your thoughts on that. Both of your thoughts on that is that a good idea, bad idea? Is it kind of silly? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great idea. There's an author out there. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's an author out there, Andrea Waltz, who wrote a book called Go for No. And their entire process is, if you don't ask, you're not going to get a yes or a no. And so they tell you to put pennies in your pocket or raisins or whatever. And when you go out, you just ask. And the more times you ask, the more yeses you're going to get. Figure out how many times you have to ask to get that first one, and then do that over and over again. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you hit the nail on the head. And it still goes back to, like, what do you do, or how do you get off the button? So when I first published my first book called Futures for Small Speculators, I was self direct published, and this was in the late, the early 2000s. Nobody was really putting like 2000, 2008, 2009, and no one was really publishing that way. And you had to go direct to Amazon, you had to go direct to Borders, you had to set up your own publishing, had a distribution all over the place. And so I got all the technical stuff out of the way, and I was on Amazon. And you think that, okay, I'm on Amazon, it's going to sell. And it didn't. I was, I think at the time there were maybe 2 million books on Amazon, ranked 1 to 2 million. My book was ranked 1,970 something thousand, right? And I looked online, and I said, and it sat there for a year. It wasn't like it was a long time. It just sat there for a year. It did its purpose because it helped promote our brokerage firm. But I'm like, man, how do I really move this book? And there was a whole thing of do 5 marketing things a day. They don't all have to be the same thing, but just do 5 marketing things a day. And I went on Amazon. I saw what some of the other people do. Now they don't have it on Amazon anymore, but it used to be that you could recommend books, right? You see these books, and if you liked them, you could recommend them. And it was also suggested reading if you're a reviewer, and etc. And so I went through and saw how these obscure books were just blowing up on Amazon. And every day I said, you know what, I'm going to commit to 30 days. I'm going to commit to 30 days of doing these 5 things a day, and I'm going to target Amazon. And I found books that I'd read, and I suggested my book alongside these books. So I'd list 3 of the books that I read, and then my book is a book that I really like because I suggested it, or recommended it, and I'd suggested it on different on different groups, because they had different groups of subjects and categories at the time. And at the end of the 30 days, by just forcing the exposure of my book on the Amazon platform, I went from book, 1,970 something thousand to being literally in the top 1% of the category.
Wow.
Because I was using the algorithm to gain exposure to my book, and people were buying it.
Right.
And it became the lead in for just me understanding that it doesn't really take a lot. It just takes consistent effort every day that's built on each other. So it's not just the end close. Like, I mean, it's great that you said, okay, get 10 people a day. But even when I started in sales as a budding broker, it was, the formula was simple: call 200, 300 leads a day, send out 5 packages every day of what we have to offer. By the end of the week, you'll have about 20 to 25. Of those 20 to 25, you may close 3 to 5, and that will generate you $250,000 a year as a broker. It's a very simple formula that has direct result and impact from the last activity. But I think people have forgotten that there's a formula to it, right?
Right.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, Case, that, yeah, it's 10 a day, but it's the work habit that you're creating to find
Right.
those 10 a day. It's those 5, those 3 to 5 activities you're doing a day that find you those 10 people. And then the consistency of that is what leads to the exponential growth that you don't perceive while you're in it, but then starts to feed you. And I think many business owners and many businesses, regardless of the income streams they're pulling in, they oftentimes forget the things that they did to get them to where they are, in lieu of a mixture of people who claim that they're smarter but aren't necessarily as hardworking. And I think there's a lot of intersection to that.
I call it targeted daily engagement. And that if you don't engage, and it doesn't take long, and that's the fascinating thing. People think that this takes so much time. Yes, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff that we do that takes a lot of time, but the targeted daily engagement, spend 15 minutes every day. Go to the platform where your peeps are. You don't have to go to the platform that they're not there, and literally say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes and I'm going to engage. And one of the engagement is, if you like what you heard, link in bio, join my newsletter. There's even more stuff there. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's that it's that constant churn, but doing it smart,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, I think it's also, I mean, it's also about, like, and I think Noble said this, is sort of what's comfortable and what isn't. right? I mean, both of you know me very well. I'm very comfortable in my little box, right? And it's only really recently that I've really taken a stand to put me in really uncomfortable situations. And I'll give you like the greatest example ever. Um, I'm involved with Noble in band Royalty, which is a fantastic uh, disruptive music project that, in my opinion, backed by facts, will be one of the largest disruptions in the music industry, I believe, uh, in this century, to be honest. And 5 years ago, I was so comfortable in my little box, or not even that, 3 years ago, when Noble brought it to me, that I wanted nothing to do with it because I didn't understand it. I wasn't open to breaking kind of past my little bubble. And when I was reapproached with it, the more I understood it, the more I talked about it, the
Okay,
more
I'm gonna have to
comfortable I
stop you right.
became.
No, 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 no. I have to stop you, Casey. No, you're trying to make like this is some lovely linear activity. It is
No,
not.
it's
You know, how many times did I reapproach you with it? See, the thing is, I've had this as a vision mission for over a decade to really give musicians a new opportunity to be able to collect royalties in a way that makes sense and kind of saves them from themselves and losing both income opportunity and growth in the space. And originally I tried to do it uh, just without blockchain. And as I understood blockchain more, and I really tried to figure out how to integrate the message and integrate the income streams, etc., it really became a mission for me. And when I started the project, and this is goes back to your 15 minutes a day, uh, Karen, I really appreciate you saying this. When I started the project, Casey was one of the first people I called. I said, Casey, I know you're in blockchain. I know you're doing a lot of projects. You got to look at what I'm working to build. He said, okay. I think this was, well, how many meetings? It had to have been a dozen or so meetings, Casey,
yeah,
between phone calls, in person, the like. And I take full blame, right? I had a project that is very big idea. And if you're not in the music space, it takes a lot to absorb, digest, and figure it out. And I've never changed my tune in the last 3 years plus. I've never changed my tune on what band royalty could be, what it should be, how we should evolve it. And I think Casey, I think the fact that I haven't changed my tune was probably more of a push for Casey because he said, I still don't understand band, but you're still doing it. You're still promoting, people are coming on board. I don't understand all the nuance, but I'm now receptive to learn and really get into the nitty gritty. Just keep sending stuff to me. And I've always been that way. I'll continue to teach you and show you and explain to you because if it's my passion, it's my passion. And I think, uh, and part of that education, and we were talking about embracing the now, was trying to really convey to Casey that uh, historical things that have happened with all of technology have been based around music, and that the next revolution for the mass adoption of blockchain will be music. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my being that at the end of the day, we saw how Napster existed peer to peer. We all grew up with CDs and vinyls, which were all cutting edge technology for the times that they came out. Jukeboxes, which were the first on demand music opportunities that were beyond the radio. So basically, a radio at your local pub. So there's a lot of powerful things that music has led the way because it's great content. We all connect with it. And I believe that the next phase of it is blockchain. And the only way to see that opportunity and embrace the now that this is the blockchain is here and what's going on is to really look at historically what's happened, right? You know, you can't separate the now from the past. And I think we've talked about this in before, Casey, that it's easy to see that the world is on pretty much a spiral. And yeah, we're not doing the exact same thing we were before, but it's the same thing with a twist, right? It's, you know, 8-track came out, it was the hottest thing ever. Then all of a sudden the CD showed up and then people bought the exact same content is from vinyl to CD. And the CD goes from MP3s and people are still downloading the same content and the same 1950 songs as MP3s, right? So it's the same music, same content, but new format.
But
So
we're
we know
also
that
going back to
the public
vinyl.
is there.
We're going back to vinyl though, guys,
Well, you know why though, right?
because they want to hold. People want to hold it. They want it. They want it in their possession because if they don't, if it's online, it's not really theirs. I guess they want to hold it.
Yep. Yep. And so ownership is becoming important again. Before everybody just went to lease and rent, and it was convenient not to have it. They didn't want to pay for storage anymore, and and garages full of stuff. And so now people want to have ownership because they can't own anything. And
Right.
that's part of the now activity, right? And
Right.
so as business owners, we always have to pay attention to what's happening now. I predicted the comeback of vinyl almost since the inception of Band Royalty. I said the trick of it is not to continue to sell people digital items, but to combine digital items with physical items and just give them the digital item. And then
Right.
all of a sudden you'll create added value, as opposed to where people feel now is like they're just wasting their money, whether they're renting the information or leasing it, or whenever they want to watch the favorite movie again, if they didn't pay their $15.99 to Netflix, they can no longer see it. People just want to be
Right.
own the stuff they like.
And that's a really good example of sort of embracing the now, right? Is um, you said something, Noble, that I think is really interesting. And Karen, I know you do this, and I think both of you probably do this without really thinking about it. And maybe it's conscious, maybe it's subconscious. I don't really know. Um, that both of you teach a lot. And I think by teaching, you're actually also teaching yourself as well as refining the message, right? I was just going back to this weekend. Uh, I had I went and watched a band at a world famous venue, because I know the manager of the band, I know the drummer of the band. I thought it would be a cool project to talk to them about this music project that we have. And I will be honest with both of you, I was really freaked out. It was a Saturday night. I didn't know where parking was. I was going by myself on purpose. I didn't know who I was going to see there, if I knew anybody there, how it was going to, like, there were so many unknowns. And once I got there, I felt immediately at ease because much like the markets, I think markets hate uncertainty, right? And I think we as people and business owners also hate uncertainty as that kind of gets squiggled. So the more kind of knowns that can be done, it smooths that out.
Mm-hmm.
For me, in talking about band with people in the music industry, and quite honestly with investors and people that are not in the music industry at all, I know for me, it helps to workshop the message the more times I talk about it. And there are times I call Noble and I'm like, listen, I don't even know if I don't know if I made this up. I don't know if I read it somewhere. I don't know if I just put some words together and it sounded good. But what do you think? I think being able to teach others what you know is a great way to also break into what's current, what's accurate now.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I used to make fun of people for, I still do behind closed doors, is like when I watch, like, people in their 40s and 50s still talk about the high school football team they played for,
Right.
or
Mm-hmm.
the accolade they got 35 years ago. And I always just go, yeah, but what do we do this morning?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
No, no. I mean, you said you really hit something on the head. And uh, when I first started out in sales, it was in boiler rooms, and so everyone was a hard pressure salesman, and they were very aggressive. And I, even at that time, I could see the writing on the wall that was just not going to work, because more and more consumers were educated, and the way the internet was starting to evolve, people could look up information even at the nascent level. And so for me, I set out early on to focus on being what they call a velvet glove closer, right? I believe that I don't really want to sell anybody. I want people to buy. And the only way to do that is you educate them along all parts of the process: how to get started, what it is that you're doing, uh, how, what, and if this even makes sense for them. You need to be the one to be willing to handle your own objections, and you need to be the one willing to disqualify people when necessary, because they just don't fit. And so for me, the education process in an educated consumer is far more valuable than someone who's been sold and has buyer's remorse. Someone who buys is buying based on all the education you provided. And that's just was a core philosophy of mine as a complete, 180 to what I was seeing. And that's why, I've always been successful because I don't really sell anybody anything.
Right.
I'm the only person I ever needed to sell was myself. And once I believed in what I was doing, then after that, either you're involved or you're not involved. But I don't want to drag anybody to the
Oh
finish
my,
line.
that's perfect. I mean, you have to sell yourself. That is, it's a daily thing for me when new technology comes across my desk, and I have to steel myself to jump in and to
Mhm.
do something different and feel the fear and do it anyways, because we get to, I literally tell myself, oh, I'm too old to do this, and then I realize how silly that sounds, because if I'm not too old to do it, and I'm the example. And you're right, Case, and I do teach. I'm all about teaching. I love when the idea light bulb goes off, when somebody realizes the power of something. And I only teach those tools that I actually use. That's the authenticity here.
Well, the other thing that both of you do very well, and I think I do this as well. I don't know, maybe people would agree or disagree, but it's almost like the more you give away, the more you attract,
Mhm.
right? Like even while we were futzing around trying to get the technology working for this show, you know, Noble was off camera and was restarting his computer, and Karen taught me two things about the URL bar on a Mac that I had no idea even existed.
Mhm.
And I know that sounds like a tiny example, but I think there's so much power in wisdom transfer
Yep.
and tribal knowledge. And I think sometimes we as business owners forget that the tribal knowledge that we have and the little things that we could do to help and help others is what
Right.
kind of I like that velvet glove closer analogy, because it'd be very easy to just not train that, not teach that,
Mhm.
not share that. But by doing so, it deepens the relationship with the customer, the consumer, the people around you.
Well, it just shows you care, right? I mean, the reality is it comes on different points. We're in a society that is very transaction oriented. And in that transaction orientation, everything can seem cold and impersonal in a lot of ways. And we're seeing it worse now than ever in the service industry, in which, okay, well, I gave you your food. Do you really need anything more? And it's unfortunate because the reality is we're looking for an experience. And the experience, when we interact with people who are knowledgeable, should be open, honest, and giving. We all can tell the person who, you feel like they're holding one back on you or they're trying to get one over on you because of your ignorance. And that idea that there's not an abundance of knowledge and abundance of sharing and abundance really impacts a lot of business owners. You said it a moment ago, like, why are business owners not embracing the now? Well, they have trade secrets, right? They
Right.
have core concepts that they don't want to share. And so it's easy to be stayed in your principles and ideas and not add anything new, because we're in an environment where everything's decentralized and everything's supposed to be open and everything's supposed to be shared. And how does that improve my business if I'm sharing everything? And
We don't.
so go ahead. But there's just a lot of that. There's a lot to that to unpack. And when you're mentally closed off, how could you even participate in what's happening now? When you're mentally locked into everything I need to know, I know already, right? Everything I need to know, I learned in kindergarten. Well,
Right.
I think at the end of the day, there's some good philosophy to it, but the core of it is, if you're not applying those principles to the moment, you've missed out on what you've learned.
Every class that I've ever taken, especially online classes, one of the things that the good ones, the ones that I have actually learned, they always say at the end of each class or each program, go teach somebody what you just learned. Because if you can't, then you didn't learn it. And so I make it a practice. For instance, Casey had me come on and did a training for a particular platform. And I realized that if I couldn't teach it, then I didn't know it well enough. So I think that's something keep in the back in your mind, that if you're learning something, if you can't turn around and actually teach it to somebody, you better go read it again, or you better go do the activity again, because that clearly is a sign. I was laughing about Case, and I think I said this on another show. When I first met Casey years and years and years ago, his banter was low tech, big check.
Which was, by the way, completely fear-based.
And
It was being fearful of embracing technology because I was stuck in the
and he
past.
couldn't get it. He just didn't understand. We were live streaming events before it was a thing, in 2011, and it's just too much. But once, and I'm sure you will bear that with me, once you realized what came from embracing technology, the check was bigger, and you changed what you said. It's high tech, even bigger check, because when you embrace, and I don't think you're afraid of technology anymore, are you, Case?
No, I'm not. It's not that I'm not afraid of technology, and this is something that I personally struggle with and have for many, many years. Is I struggle to continuously push past my comfort zone, right? So, like, just going back. So two things I want to unpack. I literally train ILT to our mastermind group, and ILT stands for Invest, Learn, Teach. So I say invest your time, energy, money, and resource, learn something new, and in order to solidify it, go out and teach it immediately. So, I mean, that's just for you guys who keep in notes. ILT, learn something and go teach it, right? Invest your time, your money, your energy in a course, a coach, a mentorship, an investment like in band or something. Go out and learn it and then turn around and teach it. And the faster you can teach it and the more times you can get good at teaching it, the better it is that you're going to understand it. Going back to this weekend and going and watching this band, I'm having a conversation with the band manager, and I did a pretty good job of fumbling my way through it, but that's because I've already had multiple conversations. And he said, "You know what, Case?" He says, "I've had 3 people now talk to me about this project that you're working on, and all 3 of them told me that you specifically said to not talk to me." And I said, "I did tell them all not to talk to you because I wanted to make sure that I could deliver the message, and in order for it to land, I didn't want to bring you in prematurely." That was a good thing and a bad thing simultaneously, right? But now I'm more comfortable in talking to a manager. But this is so important to be in complete recognition that we get into um, our comfort zone, and I just truly believe, at least for me, I'll say this for me, in order for me to break through that comfort zone, you do have to sometimes laugh at how bad you fail.
Yep.
And I had such a major fail. This is so funny. I had such a major fail at this concert that I literally texted Noble my failure and unfortunately sent it to the band manager on accident. Like, this is how bad like my brain was working. I had an opportunity, like I'm sitting there and I knew a bunch of people there, which was kind of cool. I didn't know they were all going to be there. I kind of knew a bunch of people. And so people are asking me about this new project. And I'm talking to them, and the manager keeps saying, like, "Listen, I want to bring the one that talks to you guys about." I'm like, "That's cool. I'll just kind of give them a little flavor, whatever." And then I got introduced to the bassist for Ozzy Osbourne.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we start talking, and I used to play the bass when I was in high school. It was like this, we had this like just great conversation. Gosh, we're having this real connection. We're hanging out at the merch table. Like, I'm talking about band, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this is so awesome. I'm talking to the bassist of Ozzy Osbourne. Like, this is like, I'm just thinking like, I am on top of the freaking world. And then I say, like a moron, I'm like, "Yeah," I said, "it's kind of kooky that I'm in the music business now, and this is the first time I've ever been to the Whiskey A Go Go. It's like the most world famous rock and roll club in all of like the United States, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone has played there, and in the moment it flew out of my mouth, the nanosecond I finished the sentence, I was like, I just completely cut my credibility with this guy in a nanosecond.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
when you know it, this is not saying anything bad about him. I totally deserve this. He literally, I could see him shut down the conversation, and he literally just turned and walked away.
Wow.
And I know he didn't have any place to go because I watched, he just walked up and started staring from a different view. And I was like, okay, so here's the lesson, Casey. Don't tip your hands and play your play the diminishment of yourself in a conversation that you should be playing up to. And it was a real,
It's okay. So I think you're harder. This is where I think you're harder on yourself than you need to be. Transparency is transparency. He may have discovered it at some point, regardless. I think that, yeah, maybe at the moment, and again, it just is what it is, right? And all I can say is that, don't be afraid to be transparent too. So it's like that mix. It's a sense of vulnerability. So there's always that mix in how we play to the interactions and meeting of people and etc. And I've always been open handed, and I've been the first to always say, yeah, I don't understand that, I don't know that, yeah, I haven't done that before, I haven't. So I don't, I don't. The story's great, it cracks me up. Uh, all I can say is there's two routes to go, right? In
yeah.
that kind of conversation, and you want transparency, and I don't think you should fault yourself for that. There's nothing wrong with it.
I think there's an element of transparency. I agree. I mean, I am anybody that knows me. I will always joke that I'm the same
Exactly.
guy off stage as I am on stage. Like what you
Mm-hmm.
see is what you get. I think sometimes that can get out of order in conversations, and
Well, I think you're mixed. So there's the imposter syndrome too. See, like there's a lot of flow and overlap to that, right? When you start talking about something like that, because did I self sabotage because I didn't feel like I belonged there? And there's a lot of unpacking that goes with that,
and that
right?
was. I mean, listen, there's certainly. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, you put me in certain scenarios and I'm 100% comfortable. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
zero fears, zero
Mm-hmm.
like in my little zone, I'm 100%. This was very weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
and which
so
is all good. It won't happen again. And the reality
yeah.
is now you can actually say this is my second time at Whiskey a Go Go. But
You
I will
know
tell
what? No, but
you,
you know what's actually really funny is I've actually, I mean, that was only a few days ago, and I've actually thought about um, for me to break through that because I'm not a big concert go. I mean, I go to big shows, but I don't go to
yeah.
little bands. I don't have those conversations. And what I found was at this particular venue, the managers and the people in the know are all hanging around the soundboards.
Yep,
I
they're
didn't
there.
know that. So I pretty much hung around the soundboards. It wasn't like I was having conversations, but I think this goes back to something that Karen said earlier that we glossed over it is go where your peeps are. Go
Yep.
where your audience or where your customers, the actual buyers, for example, are
Mm-hmm.
actually hanging out,
Right.
not where you think
Absolutely.
they are or not where you want them to.
And
You
be clear who your peeps actually are. It makes me
Exactly.
crazy when
Intention. But
when
I
I
think it's a
hear,
mix of intention. When
yeah,
you got to know what you got to have an intention of
it
what you're
makes
doing.
me
Not just
crazy
know.
when you ask people, who's your target? And they go, everyone. Everyone's my target. They think that by having everyone, they're going to make more sales, more connections, more relationships. In fact, it's the total opposite. The more
Yep.
you niche it down, that's where the magic happens because you're talking
Absolutely.
exactly to the exact person that needs to hear what you're saying. And it
Oh yeah.
seems counterintuitive, right? Because people think if you put it out there, throw spaghetti on the wall. That's what we call it. Throw it all out there. Somebody might take a piece of spaghetti and probably
Mm-hmm.
not. And that's real. I mean, that I don't think they will. I think you have to know
Mm-hmm.
your audience. And this, I mean, this is a whole nother show. I mean, but knowing your
It is. It's
audience,
a whole nother show, but
right?
it's a good point. There's two things I want to address real quick. I have a student in trading. My 12-year-old is looking to start a business, and that was the first thing I said to him. I said, look, before you start, you've got to figure out who you're talking to. You can't do X, and you can't imagine that you're going to be X company or Y company because you can't look at their end to see that as their beginning. You have to
Right.
figure out who you're talking to, and with that audience is who you're talking to. Do you personally identify with that audience? Is there a passion for you to continue to interact with them? Do you really want to help that audience? And then you guys were talking about the tech, and I have to say that I first started learning how to program when I was in fourth grade on an Apple II GS when we started learning how to use Turtle, and I was back in fourth grade. Uh, learned C sharp, learn basic, learn machine language, etc. I am naturally a Luddite. I naturally believe that there's certain superior technologies and superior programming languages that unfortunately just don't get adopted and accepted. When people look at blockchain, it's just JavaScript on steroids. It's called Solidity. And it just so happens to be what we're programming in. I always have to fight my natural inclination not to learn something new. It's 100%. I mean, and I'm in tech. I've been in tech. I filed a patent to do augmented reality and clothing, had to learn whole entire new programming stacks, etc. And if I'm personally fighting the need to learn a new program, learn a new app, right? I grew up on Adobe Illustrator. Before Photoshop was Photoshop, right? And every time having to learn a new technology and learn like the nuances of the difference, it has never been easy for me. And so I don't disagree with you. I miss optimized press. Nobody even knows what that is.
I do.
I know, but I miss optimized press. I've never been a fan of quote unquote their later competitors in building, squeeze pages and landing pages. So it's all this stuff. But the reality is we have to realize that regardless of our natural inclinations, that we have to be willing to engage, operate, and function in the present, knowing that whatever we're adopting now really is kind of a placeholder for the next thing that's going to come. It is nothing that we're participating in, nothing that we're doing is a permanency, right? We're not still driving the 1950 gas guzzling cars. That we have these electric cars and they all are pretty, not really good, to be honest, and they're not going to hold a candle to electric cars that are coming in a decade that can crisscross the country back and forth on 1 10-minute charge. So we have to really be cognizant that technology is designed to be a placeholder, not the end all be all.
Yep.
And once we start tapping into that and really paying attention to how things have evolved, Amazon, even Jeff Bezos spoke up and said, Amazon is not always going to be here. Be cognizant of that. Sears was the pre-Amazon of Amazon, where people would get these giant catalog
The
books.
catalog. Oh my God. Sears and Roebuck, that big,
Uh-huh.
humongous
But
catalog.
that's what Amazon is. Amazon website is only, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but early on, they approached Sears to be one of their core investors, and Sears couldn't see the now, that there was an opportunity here to be participant in the future of the same thing that they created over 200, 100 plus years ago, which is just a giant catalog that press a button and have stuff delivered to you.
How cool is that?
Amazon just copied the Sears Roebuck model and it worked. It wasn't anything special, but they just aggregated it better, was able to do logistics better. So I think that at the end of the day, it takes a little bit of understanding and a little bit of watching the past and really seeing that none of this has any level of permanency for you not to get stuck in that moment, like you said earlier, Casey. Oh yeah, I was a great football player back when I was in high school. Well, those are great skills. Did you help the current Pee Wee League go to the championship? Did you help the next? I mean, like, how are you recontributing all these skills that you're bragging about of some bygone era to the moment, to the now, and allowing it to live again, and having it reinterpreted and reoperated and pushed out and revised. And I think that's always the beauty of interacting with UKC and you, Karen, that you guys are always willing to reinvent the moment. And then take in new information, Case. I mean, that's massive to listen to Karen and say, hey, you know what? Tech is not the enemy.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like, I'll just give you like a small teeny example just to your point. I think we all three here in conversations with business owners, I hate tech, I'm not good at tech, and all of this scary stuff. And I was just thinking this, like, this is kind of a random thing, but I think it's really important is, with Band, we have an entire component based around NFTs, right? And you just say the word NFT to someone and you can almost just see their eyes shut down and check out. But a couple of weeks ago, I was up in Seattle and I was going to Climate Pledge Arena to see Madonna, right? And what was really interesting is there were people there of all ages. I saw little kids from 9, 10 years old to people in their 60s and 70s. It was a gamut of people there. And what was interesting is every single ticket that is sold to Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle is done and sold, and entry is predicated on the sale and the showing of an NFT. And
Mhm.
so here's all these same people that
Mhm.
are saying, I'm sure there's a good chunk of those folks that would say off camera or out of line, I don't know technology, blockchain freaks me out, NFTs are freaking me out, they don't exist, it's all about bored apes, yada yada yada. Meanwhile, oh, let me pull up my NFT on my phone and scan it into the scanner at the pledge arena, and then let the girl or the guy take me to my seats based on the NFTs. It was fascinating in terms of watching the difference between sort of this adoption when you don't tell people what it is versus you actually saying a buzzword or something in the press that scares the crap out of people.
Exactly. No, you
Well,
hit the nail on the head.
yeah. And we're not going to jump into AI or that, but that's another example. Artificial intelligence. You would think that the sky is falling. The response to it, and all I can say is go back when the web was there, and the dial up, and hearing the ding 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 ding, and everybody back then said the same thing. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. This is going to be the end of the world, and it wasn't. Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it, but it wasn't. And now we're so it's constant growth and constant being willing to step into your fear, step into the imposter, step into the I can do this, and give it a try, because you probably can.
Oh yeah,
um,
definitely.
I'm going to put some websites up here. You can go check out Noble at Music Royalty Secrets. What are they going to do over there?
So that's just a place where we're going to kind of educate you a little bit on the entire world and ecosystem of investing in, participating with, and sharing in royalties generated by musicians. There's a bunch of different artists that are in the news right now, all about their royalties, and we hear about Spotify. And if you've never understood how the music industry works in terms of how artists make money, it's a great place to come hang out with us. As well as we're just going to give you some overall education and bring you up to speed in what's going on now in the
Mhm.
music world. Um, and we'd love to have you play.
So check it
Absolutely.
out. And Noble, you're all over social. All they have to do is look for you, band
Yeah, just type
royalty.
in, yeah,
They're going
type
to
in my name.
find you
Yeah, they'll
everywhere.
see everything. Yeah, they'll see everything, Karen.
And
Just type in my name.
we'll drop all of band's socials as well as Noble's socials in the show notes, you guys. Um, so I know we're at the end of our time. Noble, I cannot thank you enough for just being an all around good human, a fantastic investor, one of my closest friends. I consider you a mentor, a friend, a family member, and I'm so beyond um, grateful and honored to be on this new journey as we go take someone through the entire artist community. So I thank you for being
Yeah,
on
I
here.
appreciate you sharing the journey with me, both you and Karen. I mean, it's one of the things that we have to look at what's happening now and really come up with solutions to both help people and figure out how we can take our skill sets to do it. And I really appreciate you, Casey, putting the energy, time, and effort to take your skill set to basically change the lives of musicians in a way that's really going to be significant in the years to come.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you. And Karen,
Bye,
as
guys.
always, I cannot be more grateful to be doing this show together and being back kind of in the saddle. And I'm sitting in complete gratitude today of just both of you. I've stared at you and it's like I've actually had to. It's just kind of funny. I've tried to keep my eye focused on the dot because I just keep wanting to stare down at both Karen and Noble in just pure gratitude. And so, anyways, I'm out of the banter box. I'm gonna go. Karen, thank you. Noble, thank you guys both very much, and we'll see you guys
Well,
next time.
give somebody an awesome day, as Casey likes to say. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.